Welcome to the Winter Moon podcast. This one's going to be a little different as it's the premiere of an interview style podcast. We call it In the Moonlight. The plan is to find players from different local events that have had successful tournaments and talk about their lists, talk about their tournament, and just get to know them a little bit. So for our first premiere episode of In the Moonlight, we have Adam Knauff from the Indy Garrison. And as a co-host, I have Brian. So say hi, guys.
How's it going?
Hello.
Before we start with you, Adam, and this being a new thing, Brian, In the Moonlight, you came up with that moniker. So A plus.
Thank you.
Winter Moon, could have been Spotlight, Sunlight, but I think the Moonlight's better. It doesn't burn your skin. It doesn't mind if you stay up past your bedtime. The Moonlight is superior. So, Adam, I guess say hi. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hey, how's it going? Glad to be here. Like Joe said, my name's Adam Knauff. I'm just part of the Indy Garrison guys playing out of Indianapolis. Been playing Legion for basically picked it up as a painting project during the pandemic and didn't get to play until I came to Indy about 2 years ago. So jumped in their local scene and into the grueling gridiron that's Brian Bear's basement and got beat up a whole bunch and learned a thing or two. So
you did learn a thing or two because you finished 3-0 at the Indy SmackDown last Saturday, the 8th of February.
Mm-hmm.
And they had, 29 players out there at that tournament?
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
Sweet. We want to look at different local scenes, and of course, we start close to home, and I knew who you were, but really what struck me was your list was quite a bit unique compared to what we've been seeing in the meta. So let's get straight into the list here. You ran Moff Gideon and double darks and had a really good Saturday and won 3 in a row. I'm really interested to hear you talk about it and give us your perspective on why you chose the things you did, and then that might go into what you'd tweak about it moving forward. Started out with Moff Gideon, who has aggressive tactics and the Darksaber. You also have Director Krennic with improvised orders. You run 3 Stormtroopers with T-21s, 2 Imperial Royal Guards with Electro Staves and Into the Fray, 1 Scout Trooper with a Sonic Charge Saboteur, and then you have both your Dark Troopers with Program Loyalty, with the Assault Cannon, and then you had enough points for one of them to take the Frag Launcher as well. So give us a rundown on kind of where this list came from and how many times you've played it before the tournament.
All right, so honestly, this list comes more out of kind of a side league that the Indy Garrison guys and the local Indy group has been running. Matt Evans, who organized the tournament that we just played in, also put together a very casual but entertaining league that, you're faction locked throughout this 8-week league, but you can change your army, and he even has a bunch of custom kind of objectives, units, random things, all themed around the idea of galactic conquest, if you've ever played the Star Wars Battlefront 2 style games. So it's a bunch of us guys getting together and trying to take over planets with random units and things. And I decided that I was going to play Empire. The reasoning behind that is because I actually was really not hot on Empire at all at the time. I play Rebels and Empire. Those are my 2 factions. And I had some success with Rebels, but nothing since 2.6 came out with Empire. And I was honestly feeling kind of bummed about it. A lot of what I used to play in Empire that found some success was like Gunline. Basically, Rebels were my brawler faction to get that fix, and Empire was my palate cleanser of just, I want to shoot people off the table. But I wasn't finding anything that was working, so I was like, well, if I'm stuck with it for 8 weeks, then I'm forced to kind of play and get into it more. Through some of those games and a lot of trial and error on other things, this is kind of what came out. And I guess a lot of the impetus for it was there's so much I feel in 2.6 Legion that wants to play at range 2, which is great. Like I don't mind that at all. I think it's a fun, newer direction for the game. But you have these units like Black Sun, Sleeper Cell, B2s, ARCs. All the factions have these really popular units right now that just want to get to range 2 and just drown you in dice. So I was trying to find a way that Empire could play around that, because I personally felt like Empire was a little lacking in that kind of particular range band brawl. So I landed on Gideon, Krennic, and Dark Troopers, mostly because you can give the Dark Troopers a lot of standbys that way through the command cards from either of those two leaders, and they can't strip them off. And no unit wants to walk into a Dark Trooper standby. It doesn't end well. Because while Dark Troopers were in experiments just because I owned them, essentially. So I was like, hey, I'll throw them in this league. I'll see what they do. I hear they're bad. I kind of understand why on paper they're pretty bad. They're much weaker than they used to be. They're really slow still, and the objectives have changed, right? Obviously, that's not how my experience has played out. They've played really well for me so far. So that's just kind of where the impetus for that list came from, is those two commanders building around facing those range 2 threats that are really popular.
So just to be clear, for anyone newer to the game or unfamiliar with Dark Troopers, they have a null courage value. So when they get to standby, they can't gain suppression. So the typical way to strip a standby is by attacking the unit, therefore giving them of suppression and stripping the standby. That can't happen for them with the null courage. So really, just the force push is the only way to get them to lose their standby. So
force push or any other ability that causes them to move. Yeah.
Fair enough. So like a Dooku command card or something like that. Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, you said, okay, Darks could be really good. Standbys on Darks are really good. Let me grab the 2 commanders that can give Dark standby, and you started there. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The IRG is a big role in this too, because
right.
They recently changed. Was it unstoppable keyword? It used to be where when Dark Troopers first came out, they could be guardianed by IRG, and then they fixed that because they thought it was too strong.
They were kind of broken when they first came out.
They were pretty overpowered. But then with this new 2.6 update, they changed that Dark Troopers went from full armor to armor 3. Is that correct,
Armor
Adam?
3.
Armor 3, but now they can be guardianed again. So they have not as much armor, but running darks with the IRG behind them.
It's really gross, and it's funny you mentioned that, because I put the list together not realizing that was a change. And I also went to the tournament.
Wait, hold on. I gotta stop you. How are you saying for the tournament on Saturday, or like when you first started practicing with it?
So when I first started practicing, I didn't know that was a change. I will say though that if I wanted to go complete full scumbag, I would probably put Protector on the 2 IRG. But I actually asked one of my opponents, my first round opponent at the tournament, hey, are you going to Worlds? And, are you doing Adepticon that's coming up? And he is, which he's lucky. I'm not. And, like, I had not, in any of these games, even the league, been guardianing them with the IRG even afterwards, because, I don't know, I know that I met people that resulted in a negative play experience when that was first a thing. So I'm like, I don't want to do that to people. I put the IRG in because I just like them, and they are something in Empire that can run into arcs and not feel terrible. I think, they do the Guardian thing, but they can also run up and whack something with their little shocky batons, But yeah, I asked my first round opponent, like, hey, are you going to Worlds? He said yes. I was like, okay, do you know that this is a change? And do you want me to play it? Because, like, at Worlds, that is a thing that could happen.
You're so nice, Adam.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, to be fair, it didn't come up too much. And he did say, like, yeah, which, to his credit, he wants the good practice. He's getting geared up. Like, I'm just playing casually, right? Like, I can't make it to Adepticon, unfortunately, this year. But yeah, so it's just funny you mentioned that. Because I was like, I don't know. I want to have a good time. will this ruin the time you're having? No? All right, then great. If it's good practice, then we'll just carry on and move on. So,
Okay, Mr. Nice Guy. I knew you were a nice guy. I didn't know you were that nice.
Yes.
well,
All right, so go ahead. What's up?
I was going to say, you don't take my word for it. I'm sure there's unnice things I did to my opponents this weekend, and they can comment on that. But I'm a biased source on myself. Go figure.
Okay, so you got the darks. You have your commanders that give standbys. Really powerful command cards. We'll get into that a little bit more on how you use those. You have the double IRG, which are just really solid linebackers, but obviously can guardian everything on the board, which is great. And then so you filled it out with 3 storms of T-21, just a solid unit. What about the Sonic Charge Saboteur Scout? Because that one struck me as a little bit odd, but I asked you about it, and you seemed all about it. So tell me about that guy.
I will start. In our conversation that we briefly had about it, I do think it comes a little bit down to just and add spice to flavor, for whatever recipe you're cooking, right? People are gonna have units that they enjoy, and I just have always enjoyed scouts. I just, have run in the old, legacy format. I loved just this is a 48 point, 4-man naked scout unit, and they throw 8 dice if you let them get close enough to shoot. They're a good objective unit. They're pretty cheap. They do throw a good amount of dice per model. It is very swingy because they don't surge on that attack pool. However, there's so much stuff that likes to, again, get up in your face in the new version because ultimately the objective play encourages that. The Scout 3 move that they get when they come on the board, plus a Speed 2 move and a Range 2, I think I haven't had a game with them yet that they don't get to shoot round 1 into something. And that's still a choice, right? You don't have to. They could scout or get to most line of sight blockers if need be, APOI. But I tend to use them, and my style is okay, I usually give them an order, and they will be the last thing to go round 1. And I will be measuring and checking to see what my opponent gives me, and then weighing that decision to whether to throw them out or not. But to me, they're kind of disposable. Honestly, they're 71 points, and that's with the Saboteur. They're pretty dirt cheap for throwing 10 black dice, Sharpshooter 1, and that's at range 2. And then if they let them survive or get close enough, if they're super aggressive into your face, I've had a couple games where they get to throw that Saboteur round 1, and then you have
that's
blast,
nasty.
suppressive, and that single model is throwing 4 dice, so suddenly up to, what is that, 10 dice? 9 or 10?
No, I love the Saboteurs on all the scouts, to be honest. Even the CIS ones, love them on them too, especially if you give them the Vibro Sword. If you can get 1 full attack off with those, and then maybe a half of an attack on the next round, you got your value worth. Those are some pretty solid attacks. So, no, I get that.
The one thing that I love about his list, Joe, is how many axes, Adam?
It's 10, but the other reason the Dark Troopers are good is because they have 2 tokens that go into the stack. So it's 10 acts, but the Dark Troopers each go twice, so it plays 12.
But he also gets the passes.
You get the passes. You get a double dip. You get the best of both worlds because you get the 12 acts, but you also get the 2 passes that you wouldn't normally get. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but no matter how many acts your opponent is playing, you always go last. You always go last with this setup. And if they get priority on their command card, you'll get the last 2 acts no matter what. Mm-hmm. Is that correct?
Yep.
Sure is. But the coolest part is that those cheap scouts, or relatively cheap scouts, they're pretty good tech against things that are popular right now, right? So you got your Rebel sleepers that are popular right now that want to pop out the end of round 1. They want to do some damage. And Adam's like, yeah, do it. I dare you. Come on out. My scouts are going to lay waste to your sleepers, which they will.
Because he has last act, no matter what. So even these 14-act Rebel lists, their 13-act lists, he still goes last. Mm-hmm. And that's huge in round 1 because that really nullifies the alpha of your opponent. On top of that, you have decent standbys too, if you wanted to take them round 1. Okay, let's talk about command cards. Just clicking through it, it looks like you played. Okay, no, you have a good mix. Okay, so you have Moff Gideon's 1, 2, and 3 pip, and then you have. Oh, interesting. Actually, you don't have Krennic's 3 pip, so you play his 1 and his 2, but you don't have his 3, which is honestly, I think, one of the most powerful cards right now with the way the game works. But maybe it just doesn't work with your army.
I have some thoughts about that we can get into if you want.
Yeah, let's talk command cards. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I guess I'll go with that because that is probably a notable exception. Like you said, that is, I think viewed right now as one of the hottest command cards. That
it's a powerful effect.
It's just so hot right now,
Yeah.
And it's good. It's really good. I mean, putting suppression on units that are not even on the board yet, potentially round 1, and causing just difficulties for your opponent, or late game, just everything getting suppression and not scoring potentially in your favor. That is big. For this particular list, partly it was due to I chose to put aggressive tactics on Gideon, and so I wanted him issuing orders more often for those surge tokens.
Okay.
Particularly, with the amount of orders, the max aggressive tactics surges you can get is 4. And so usually that means like your 3 pip giving 3 orders, and then entourage on the dark troopers getting your 4th. So you're giving out your max tokens there, which you're not doing if I took Krennic's 3 pip, for example. So that was part of it. And then the other part is, even though like Krennic's got compel to keep your core a little more resistant to the Annihilation Looms giving every unit suppression, I don't love the idea of your core walking onto the board with 2 suppression. I think it just slows you. It can slow you down just as much as it slows your opponent.
With you having the Courage 1 units, I get why you leave it off, especially with the Assault handing out 4 surge tokens, because that's, I glossed over the aggressive tactics on Moff Gideon, but that's a big point investment, but it's a huge payoff if you can get those darks and with surges. So I'm assuming you prioritize darks to get their surges, and then who else were you looking to give surges to?
The IRG for their Guardian saves, and the Scout Troopers round 1, so that they had a surge at least to go try and shank whatever it was they exposed.
So do you typically start with Assault turn 1, or do you go standing orders?
Yeah, and all 3 of my rounds I opened with that.
Okay. So you go with Assault, you still get you're going to get last activation no matter what, with the way the Dark Troopers work. From then, was there like a standard play that you usually did round 2, or did it depend?
No, I would say it was very board dependent. It depended on how many things were lining up for that, the kind of last first punch that I think lots of people are trying to do. Whatever unit was Scout or that was in the transport that throws my bucket full of dice is wanting to go first and just nuke something in round 2, right? So I will say generally it was one of the cards that gave standbys, either the Krennic 2-pip or Gideon's 3-pip, just to really mess with opponent's tempo. If they can go first, but if they really want to go first and walk into, on Gideon's 3-pip, I gave it to, both Dark Troopers and a core have standbys. So, if they really want to walk into that with the unit arcs, then that's a free unit arcs that gets picked up off the table.
Okay.
I don't know. It really messed with things.
So before, I do want to ask you how your 3 rounds went, kind of how the games went, what the matchups were. Before we do that, I do want to let anyone listening know that maybe you're listening on YouTube. We're also on Spotify. You can also find Winter Moon Wargaming .substack.com, where you can find other content and articles, as well as access to all the audio. And if you want to send any questions, any comments, feedback, please send them to our mailbag, wintermoonmailbag@mail.com. Send us anything you got. And matter of fact, if you're liking this interview style, you have any local events coming up soon and you want to throw something out there for our next one, send us a message. So without further ado, let's get into your 3 games. Well, actually, before we get into the game, Did you have anything in your head that you wanted to see or that you didn't want to see in the meta as far as, hey, I want to come in here and win 3 games a day? Was there anything you're scared of with this list?
Well, first off, I will say my goal is always 2-1. I'm happy if I make 2-1. I'm not. This is one of, I think, 2 times that I've gone 3-0 in any tournaments that I've played. So just to put in perspective kind of where I usually sit.
You're selling yourself short, Adam. What was your record at the last Indie Open?
Well, you beat me and Matt beat me. So my 2 local buddies, my skirmishing partners, made sure my record was 4-2.
4-2 though.
I did go 5-1 at the first Indie Open. That was
Yeah, and I know we faced in a 3rd round at a local, Adam. So I knocked you off one of your 3-0s.
That was my very first tournament, Joe. My very first one.
Yeah, we'll table that. Not because I tabled you, because I didn't. We'll table that, but we'll come back around to it because I do want to talk about that. But okay, so you played a CIS list, your first list. Tell us about that a little bit.
I did. I played a gentleman by the name of Sean, who actually I had played before at one of the Indie Opens. He's a really solid player, and honestly, his list, I feel like every list from this tournament I walked up to, looked at it, and it scared the crap out of me. His list was really neat. It was Grievous, and it had 4 Magnas, because Grievous can do that with Entourage. It had a unit of Aqua, the new Aqua droids, and then it had the required core, a T-Series, and a few PK repair bots behind it. I think ideally to use the Aquas as a wall, and then all of a sudden Grievous and 4 units of Magna Guards, 2 with whips, 2 with rockets, pop out.
Yeah, you know what they don't want to pop out into is a bunch of standbys.
That was the saving grace for sure. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that wants to get to range 2 and just mess you up. And I think I even forgot to add Magnas to that list earlier, but they're there. They scared the heck out of me. But yeah, the standbys definitely played a major part. I think round two, I played one of the standby cards. I think it was Moff Gideon's. Anyway, one of the Dark Troopers had a standby. His Magna Guard goes. The scouts had put, that swingy dice pool. It doesn't always swing in your favor. I had scouted and tried to, pull a couple bodies off of Magna. I think I did 1 wound. But then very start of round 2, they try and get in. We were playing intercept the transmissions, so the diamond objective, and the Dark Troopers take 3 bodies from that 4-man unit on a standby, and so
they teamed up, double standby.
No, a single
just
one.
one,
a single one. And that is not. Yeah, obviously not statistically likely, but it does happen. And so it was like the first unit that he tried to really bring in and start that brawl just was suddenly a unit leader. And my dark troopers hadn't even gone once of their 2 times, so yeah.
Yeah. Dark troopers shooting 3 times in a round feels pretty good.
So is that was it kind of all downhill from there as far as that standby kind of attrition that you gained right off the rip?
I would definitely not say that. Sean was a really good opponent. He made me have to make some tough choices on some of the other points. It was a notable moment from that game for sure that did change things. It meant one of the branches, one of his sides that he was choosing was significantly weakened, and he was going to crash into one of my POIs with Grievous and 3 units of Magnas, but he kind of shifted, if I remember, one of them to kind of plug that gap left by the, I took that activation of that one,
right.
Magna leader.
Who did you give your intel tokens to? Both your darks or?
No, in that game I gave it to Gideon and a IRG.
Okay. You have a lot of good choices.
Yeah.
You have a lot of solid choices. Okay, so you closed that one out on Intercept. Round 2, you played a Empire list. So you Empire v Empire.
Now, Adam, I do have a quick question about some of the tactics of your list, because with these new POIs and the capture point and things like that, how you want guys just on POIs, that opens up a lot of play for Moff Gideon, and yeeting darks across the board. Did you find that to be effective in this tournament?
So, interesting thing. I did not play that card once in the entire tournament.
What?
Didn't play it.
Just didn't need to?
Kind of a case of didn't need to. Round 2, we'll get into it.
Okay.
Gideon just kind of got his head cut off by Lord Vader. So it wasn't a choice in that game. I think people know that that's, if you're bringing Gideon, you got darks, that's the thing you're trying for, right? That's the reason you bring Gideon in theory. I think Gideon's a lot better than just that one command card, personally. But that's because I've been playing him for a little while, and I just think he does a lot for his points.
I honestly think that card is not as powerful now in 2.6 because typically you have to be range 2 away from all enemy units. Is that correct?
Correct.
All enemy models, right? So typically your enemy models are going to be on their POIs. So then you're putting a dark range 2 from a POI, which takes them 3 to 4 moves to get in. 3 moves to score that POI. Yes, they can be moved to a flank and destroy something, but it still takes them a turn and a half or 2 full turns to actually score. And so I can see how some games you're just like, hey, I have control of the board. I don't need it to be fancy. Let's just keep winning type mindset.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's a little bit of a mind game more than anything. People know that's something you can do. And I have had a couple games with this list where people kept a unit completely out of the fight because they were worried about the darks teleporting. And that is legitimate, but also if I don't, then even if it's just a naked core that you're trying to, aerial deny those dark troopers, that's a unit that I do not have to care about. And if that's one less unit in the fight, if I win the fight, then great. You have a naked core that's still doing the same thing, trying to stop me, but now without anything else to back it up.
You make such a great point, Adam. That's something we really haven't talked about yet, like on the cast. But like sometimes the threat of something is more powerful than the actual thing. So keeping it in your back pocket, if you're keeping your opponent, if you're making them think about it for 4 rounds in a row, that's just as powerful as doing the thing on the second round, right? Because at least their head will be clear after that, right? So that's a good point. So your opponent had Commander Vader and Veers. I'm looking at his list. He had 4 Stormtroopers, 3 Medbots, triple dewback. So it was Vader dues, and he had an ATSD. So Veers guidancing an ATSD, Vader with his triple dues, triple Medbot. Yeah, that seems pretty nasty. So how did that game go?
Again, I think I immediately started sweating as soon as he pulled out his models. I was like, all right. There are good things in Empire. You found one. Cool. But yeah. His name was Nick. He's from the Star Friends group. Really, really great guy. It was a really fun game.
Star Friends, are they Michigan based?
No, he's Kentucky.
Yeah, I thought they were Kentucky based.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't quote me on that though. But yeah, they came up with a whole crew, and I think hopefully I had a good time. I had a good time chatting with all of them. But yeah, he brought this monster of a list, and I was looking at it and I was like, how did you fit all that? Because like his stormtroopers had T-21s on them and medbots, and yeah, like his core wasn't just gutted things. Like they contributed and dewbacks and an.
Oh, did he not have force push?
He did not have force push, so that's how he found some points.
Did play a factor.
He had saber throw, choke, burst of speed, and inspiring presence, which is Courage 4 range band, I believe.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. When did Moff Gideon die? Did he get one shot?
No. So I think just to give some kind of, again, highlights in moments that the game I felt kind of teeter-tottered or pivoted one way or the other. Round 1, his ATST was dead.
Whoa.
And that was...
You don't have that much... Yeah, you have some, but
you'd be surprised.
Those stormtroopers roll crits, man.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised because Krennic can come on an exemplar and aim, so you can at least chuck an aim to them, and that's just round 1. Usually, like round 2, 3, 4, the rest of the game, Krennic can spotter one and take an exemplar aim, and then it's really not outside the realm of possibility that a critical 2 8 white dice shot gets at least 3 crits, right? Because you're rolling 8 dice, so that's probably a normal
that's
one.
a good point.
2 surges, precise 1 and 2 aims. Like you can get anywhere from like 3 pretty consistently to spike and like, all right, here's 5 crits and maybe a hit. Have fun. Like that's just from the core. That's not the Dark Troopers.
Yep.
All right, so you knocked out an ATST turn 1.
It was due to a little bit of a misplay, maybe on his part. He moved the ATST on, and then he guidanced it with veers to move again. So he
positioning for turn 2.
Yes, positioning for turn 2, and as a really good wall for his dewbacks. Like the strategy was good. I couldn't pick on his dewbacks at all. However, he was far enough up that my Dark Troopers hadn't gone. I had a unit of Stormtroopers that hadn't gone, so I got to put the critical 2, Stormtroopers in, did a couple, and then the Dark Troopers could walk on just a speed 1 and be in range of his ATS.
The Dark Troopers shot him on their first activation.
Yes.
Not even their second act.
Yes.
So, yeah. So if he was like another inch further back or something like that.
He would have been fine.
Oh, wow.
That's a bummer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but he kind of returned the favor because the end of round 1, Vader infiltrates because that was the card he played, moves up, gets halfway across the board, and is ready.
As one should do. Vader should be infiltrating.
Just be
Commander Vader,
it's Vader. So at the beginning of round 2, I played, I think it was Krennic's standby 2-pip. My Moff Gideon was within range 2 of his Vader because I had made a misplay, putting him a little too far forward. And so Gideon almost got like sliced by a saber throw from Vader coming on end of round 1. And fortunately, a Valiant IRG jumped in the way, took both pierce wounds and died. But I knew, all right, shoot, he's at range 2 of Vader to start this next round. So I played that standby. I put a standby on, I think, the Scouts and Gideon. So not even my Dark Troopers in that instance, because the Scouts had gone up and thrown a bucket of dice at Vader, and I think done him 2 or 3, something like that. And he's got a bunch of med bots behind it. So he pulled, I think, one of them off. And then, so he does his Indomitable Vader 1-pip and moves up to engage something. I trigger my standby on Gideon and base Vader. Which I didn't, I was like, I don't know, this probably isn't going to work out, but he does have the red surging save, and honestly, he's safer in melee than he is against a saber throw because he's only immune pierce in melee with the dark saber. So, I can at least rely on my saves to do something in melee. Gets the relentless attack, of course, and my saves don't do great. I take 3 of my 5 health on Gideon, but since that was his standby and I had an order on him, I go with him after that because that takes Vader's turn. He doesn't burst the speed into my lines. He gets stopped half.
So you said Indomitable, but you're saying he played his 1-pip.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
the Implacable. So he gets to go twice. Yeah. No, all good.
Yeah.
So he took a wound. So now Vader's at 1 wound?
Now he's at like 3 because the Scouts did their best to try and shank him. They did like 2.
Gotcha.
I think they might have done 3, but he's got med bots, so like it was kind of a game of like Vader's bouncing up and down as far as wound count. But then, at least his first activation is out of the way. He takes another wound to put his token back in the stack. I go with Gideon and just withdraw and run and touch a POI, essentially, because we were doing bunker assault for this game.
Okay.
So at least Vader didn't burst his speed, and he's not buried somewhere in all my other stuff. Of course, his bag spits out Vader like the next thing, which I was like, oh, okay, well, neat. But he only gets one act on his second activation, which he uses to full best effect to move and relentless a saber throw for. I was like, my Gideon at this point was within range of my IRG again. So I was like, all right, as long as he doesn't just roll crits, another IRG can jump in front of this flying saber.
Crits,
we're good. No, he unaimed, just moves, throws 3 red dice, 2 of them are crits, and Gideon's head goes rolling by the POI.
That's funny.
But it did end up being that I was able to then shoot Vader, who was in the open, not engaged by anybody, with all the Dark Troopers, everything at my disposal. He does finally die end of round 2.
Oh, okay. So you put your entire army into him, though, to kill
essentially, him. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he had all the med bots running up and doing their darndest to fix him, keep the robot cyborg alive.
His core were probably just out there willy-nilly in the open healing him as well, right?
They were, because they were essentially double moving and then cohering and pulling a wound off Vader. And it was close. It was really close. It was a good game because I think it came down to the last 2 activations that I had to try to deal the last wound to Vader. Otherwise, he goes and probably suppression bomb 3 pips me for my whole army start of round.
Right. VP wise, you just kind of just won it by 2 VPs by the end. So it was a close game overall. It
was a lot more, of course, in my favor after Vader went down, because with the ATST and Vader down, I didn't have too much worry about holding my bunkers. Because essentially, my game plan here was he's coming at me. I am not going to try and counter push to his bunkers. It's just not going to work. Just happened to work out that I was able to shoot him enough that when he got in, he just didn't have enough. One of the fun parts of this game is I have Destroy Enemy Base in my deck because, again, the threat of Dark Troopers with a bomb token and teleportation is just something that is going to be sitting on your opponent's mind.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And it never, again, I didn't get a chance to play. That would have been the game. I would have loved to do that, but Gideon kind of just was non-existent. But yeah, so there was an enemy base floating there. He did get a dewback onto mine, but I think it was that dewback and a couple, 2 or 3 activations of mine, and I ended up panicking the dewback. He dropped his bomb token. Krennic was standing there, grabbed it, and just ran away.
Oh yeah, I forgot. You can grab both bombs on that one.
You sure can.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, that's nice. Okay, so you closed out round 2, Empire v Empire, and then in the final round of the tournament, you played the big bad sleeper cell bus Luke Rebels.
Yeah, Delta Dave.
How did that game go? So, that being one of the premier armies in the meta right now, I would say it's fair to say. How was that matchup playing something a bit more unique in the meta with the double darks into something that's the staple of you got to be able to beat this? How did that matchup just in general feel?
So I know I've said this twice now, so it loses some of its impact. But again, I looked at this list and was like, "There's no way," because it had it had 2 buses with their impact guns. It had the popular triple ATRT with their impact laser cannon.
Oh wow! Yeah, so we had 5 vehicles with impact guns.
Yeah,
it had 3 sleeper cells that are also decent in
who do well into armor. Yeah, they throw enough dice. And I heard Luke can hit a vehicle or hit armor twice in one turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Every once in a while. So.
Yeah, so looking at that, I was like, oh, great. So I will not have Dark Troopers by the start of round 3. They'll just be gone. Like, what do I do? And I think it just came down to, again, a couple standby castles that ended up working out.
You just couldn't walk, because those Rebel sleepers can't walk into a standby.
No, they absolutely can't.
They are not tanky enough to walk into a standby.
To be honest, like none of those things are tanky enough. Like they all can do. They can all plink damage pretty well into armor, but none of those things can walk into those standbys.
No, I mean, like I'm thinking off the top of my head, like maybe a bus like double moves and just sits in the face of the Dark Troopers. But I don't even know, like, depending on the setup and the terrain, like I don't even know if that worked. Also, the bus could just die. So,
yeah,
Yep. So, what objective were you playing on that one against the Rebels?
We played Recover the Research.
Okay, so that's the one where you got to hold 4. The goal is to hold 4 points, 4 POIs.
Yeah, to max
or just contest. Just contest.
Or contest. Yeah, you don't even have to secure them. So, how did that one sum up? Was it just everybody sitting on their POIs and duking it out, or was there a lot of maneuvering?
No, so it was interesting because essentially I balled up pretty hard. I basically was like, I'm going to try and turn this into a skirmish match and just, even though Recover the Research, like I was really worried because Recover the Research is definitely not one that you can super afford to do that because it's really spread out. And I like it because it uses a lot of the map, but I wanted all of my hitting and capabilities to be able to focus down some of these vehicles before they removed my really expensive Dark Troopers, essentially. So I wanted to be able to put effective fire into the buses that were transporting sleeper cells and just in my face round 1.
But see, here's the thing, though. Although he does have a lot of impact, he's not forcing more than 3 at a time normally, right? Unless he gets some spiky hit, right? The ATRTs can't do more than 3, and the speeder trucks only have impact 2, right? So you're able to guardian probably, I'm just throwing out a number, probably like 80% of the hits that come into them, no?
If I was
set up properly.
Protector.
Oh, okay. So
impact triggers before Guardian does. Those turn into crits before you can.
They turn into crits before Guardian. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. That's why you need Protector. Yeah. Okay,
that's what I'm saying. Like expect people to go full scumbag and actually throw a Protector on there, because then that is a thing you can absolutely do, and just pull 2 of 3 crits onto the IRG and your darks get away with rolling.
So
1.
Guardian without Protector doesn't help against impact.
No.
Mm-mm. Okay. All right.
It does help to mitigate the armor 3.
The armor when somebody gets 5 hits or 6 hits.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. As far, did you take out the buses first, or what was kind of like the order of effect? And did it end up being really close at the end, or how did that attrition go?
This one, I feel like kind of domino effect for him.
Snowballed pretty bad.
Unfortunately, yeah. So round 1, again, I was just trying to play all right, I'm gonna kind of turtle up and do my standby castle and try to expand a little later and hope that I can get to those points quick enough to even the score. But one of the funniest things is I brought a unit of IRG on the board as one of my earlier activations. Didn't really have a second act for them to do because sleepers are so dang scary if you walk outside of your deployment zone. They're like, oh, great, cool. We can scout.
We'll kill that thing.
And we can hit you with 2 aims and, 12 dice. So I was like, I'm not doing that. I don't know really what to do with them. I'll get them into a position to guardian and I'll take a standby. In case, he's got buses that these are being transported in. I don't think this will matter, but I also don't think the range 4 plink damage is coming at my IRG. Why take a dodge? I'll just take a standby. Sure enough, later in that round, a bus drops some sleepers. They move up. And I was like, okay, I will trigger my IRG standby, I guess, because they walked into it. And they lost, I think, 4 of their models off of that IRG shot.
Oh. IRG shots aren't even that great.
No, they're really not. I mean, it did have some help from
the
exemplar aim from Krennic. But yeah, it just kind of was like, all right, here's 6 of my 8 or whatever their black dice,
Painful.
with the aim. And then because of, how much of a straight line kind of just bum rush that these guys were doing to try and kill something, they really weren't in cover. So, yeah, it crippled that return fire. It's like, okay, the sleepers went from 12 dice to like 4.
Yeah. Yeah, which is a huge deal. Like, that's a huge deal. Okay, so round 1, you roll up to CIS, you start sweating bullets, you get through the round. Round 2, you see Vader triple dues, and you think, there's no way I'm going to win this one. Then round 3, you play the big bad sleepers with Luke, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm 3-0. I'm tied for first. What a great day of Legion.
Yeah, I was like, oh.
And so what was that feeling?
It's not a feeling I get very often, but it was good. It was good. It was a good feeling. It definitely was a good feeling just for the people I played. All 3 were great. Yeah, I did feel for Dave just for the domino effect. I think that round 1, I got a sleeper cell. I managed to bully an ATRT down to 1 health with the critical stormtroopers, and I killed a bus.
Oh,
so
oof.
Going into round 2 was rough for that one. But yeah, they were all, he stuck it out, and all the games were good. My opponents were good. It was a good time. And the list, it pays to practice a list, I suppose.
It does.
It
so
really
much.
does. People say it, but you gotta actually do it. It's so tempting, and I've done it multiple times where it's like, I've been playing that. I don't want to take that to a tournament.
Tell us about the practice, because I know you said that Brian and Matt in some scrims beat up on you a little bit on your darks. No, you beat up on them. Tell me, so how many times did you practice it roughly?
Let's see, probably 5.
Okay.
I would say probably got 5 games in with it. I usually get maybe 2 games a week. I have like one day that I can play. Sometimes I get 1, sometimes I get 2.
So from the initial build to what you took to the tournament, was there some tweaks throughout those practices to the list, or were you pretty locked in?
Some command card tweaks. I did have Krennic's 3 in there originally. Some minor playing around with the upgrades, like aggressive tactics versus some other kind of command slot stuff.
I really like what you did with aggressive, and after you explain your assault choice for the aggressive tactics, I think it's the right call. I really do.
Especially because he wants to shoot with those stormtroopers, and with those stormtroopers have a suppression on them, he can't do that.
You don't want your storms to get suppression, so it's really not, it hurts you a little bit. And then there's like this tiny little added bonus that you don't have a cunning 3-pip, which means maybe your opponent also has a 3-pip they play turn 1, and you get like last 2 acts because you both go 3-pips.
Yep.
That's a tiny little bonus, but
well, it's really funny because like the Dark Trooper, just the way the token stack works now is just so rude because you're always going to get to go last. But then there's also the games like with Dave, who had a 12-act list to my 10. It's like I'm bringing my own built-in guaranteed advanced intel because I get a pass.
Yeah.
And so it's like
you
and
always
then that
go,
game it was even worse because I did actually get advanced intel.
Oh, you got advanced.
Yeah.
Did you get last 3 acts to start?
Yes, something like that.
Golly.
That's nasty.
Ugh.
You mentioned Protector. I had chatted with you before a couple days ago when I asked you about this, or maybe it was yesterday. And I said, what if you got rid of the Saboteur? And you're like, no, heck no. That dude's a beast. So, now I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, maybe you would feel okay dropping one of your 3 T-21s. You could go 2 Protectors. You could throw Electrobinos on Krennic. Now he can spotter 2. And you still have 2 points. Like, just an idea. I don't know what you drop other than one of your heavies. Because I don't think you want to drop aggressive tactics. I really don't. I think that's one of the major aspects. The surges to defend are huge.
It is. And honestly, a lot more I used them for offense on the Dark Troopers, which surprised me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. It just ended up kind of working that way.
Like at the end of rounds, or like you played it risky and used it like middle of the round?
No, usually on like their second activation.
Yeah,
And
that makes sense.
That typically came towards the end of the round. It was pretty rare that I was feeling so much pressure that I was like, I need to go with the Dark Trooper and then immediately go again with them.
So no other tweaks that you'd make? You don't have a lot of wiggle room.
Right. I was going to say there's not an awful lot of stuff that you can change. I don't know that I personally would be willing to give up a T-21 on the Storms.
Yeah.
In many cases I would, but I think particularly in this list, they, to me, felt like they got away with murder the entire time because people just don't shoot at them.
Did you feel like improvised was a necessity?
It's helpful. I don't know that it was a necessity. It's helpful for when you still draw one of the two Dark Troopers that's in your stack early. Because sometimes you really need the first go with them as padding. A lot of the time I would, if things were really trying to get in my face, you can generate your own standby castle without the command cards.
My last question is, would you be willing, hear me out, maybe you don't need the Darksaber. Maybe that's not 100% needed.
That's an interesting thought.
So you've played you've maybe 8 games with this army now. Do you feel like the Darksaber was like really holding things down, or just an idea?
This might sound odd because I know a lot of people don't hold Gideon in super high regard, and I don't think he's the answer to all of Empire's problems by any means, but he's just a piece that I have played and liked playing for a while. And I think he is a much more offensive piece than people play him. I think people look at him and his cost and that he's sort of in that same realm as Veers or Krennic, and they treat him as a Veers or Krennic that's a little more expensive as like a support piece. I think you need to be up there mixing it up with him. He hits pretty effectively, and his saves aren't bad, and his command cards are meh. I think, like, with the exception of maybe with these Dark Troopers, but otherwise they're not that splashy in a normal Empire list. But with his Darksaber, he has Spotter for free. He has Tactical. And he may not have Charge, but I think a lot of that has been fixed by the fact that the game wants to be at 2. Like, he gets into melee way easier now than I ever had him before. And he doesn't need to play his 1-pip to do it. So, I don't know. Like, he usually, when he walks up to something that has an Observe token and he's got an aim from Tactical and he surges crit, his Darksaber is 4 of his 5 for me almost all the time, if not 5 for 5, Pierce 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I get it.
It's hard to give up. I don't know. I'm not sure. I think if I was going to tweak it, Adam, I would. I know you love that Saboteur. I would drop the Saboteur to get a couple of protectors.
Yeah, I think that does make the most sense. It's the heart versus mind. My heart wants to go like, I don't really need that aggressive tactics. Like, I can get rid of that, put Protector on both of them, and take like another 5 point something, like double improvised orders, or I don't know what. But you're probably
by the way,
right.
Call me crazy, but couldn't you just get a 4th Storm T-21 and still get 2 Protectors? I think you're 1 point off.
Oh, for like trading out the Scout.
Yeah, like just trade, and then your order control is a little better as well. Okay, so I want to move on from this. I do want to pay respects. There was 4 players that went 3-0. So Andrew Gleason was playing some Rebels. He had Luke, Leia, ATRTs, 2 Sleeper Cells, and he had some SX shotgun troopers.
And Andrew hails from Cincinnati. He's part of the Cincinnati crew.
Yep, and then we had one from Columbus, one of the Columbus guys, Matt Mara. I'm trying to think if I've met Matt. Sorry, Matt, if like we've shaken hands like 3 times and I forgot. But I know the folks from Columbus get down to Indy quite a bit. So he finished 3-0. He was playing CIS, and he had Kalani. He had a T-Series, 2 B2s with ACMs. Oh, he had the Saboteur BX squads with the vibro swords that I was talking about. I really like those guys.
Ooh.
I like that
And
a
then
lot.
and then he had a couple Droidicas and a Persuader tank and a Snail tank. So really cool list. Our friend Trent Hale was another 3-0 playing CIS as he does. And he was playing, I know, a well-practiced Dooku, double Black Sun, kind of a mixed bag of GOs, B1s,
Double aqua.
a super tac droid, and then he had the double aqua wall. He threw in one dwarf spider. He's beat me twice with it, like badly. And you're like, oh, this, it doesn't have the typical CIS order control and things, but it does synergize so well with Dooku and his command cards and the Black Sun power just coming out from behind the aqua wall. So he was playing CIS. They all went 3-0. The Indie Smackdowns, the local events that the Indie Garrison runs, typically do get like 25 plus players there. So they had another big turnout.
They had a full 36, but it's flu season. They had 7 drops at the last minute.
Just to say it again, if we do these again, which we want to, I want to jump around and find other scenes. Adam was someone I know is a good sport. He had a really cool list, and I know he's a super nice guy, and we already heard that. So, Brian, is there anything you want to talk about or ask Adam, or maybe say something nice about him before you go, Brian, and then we'll finish it out?
Yeah, I mean, I feel a little bit bad and also a little bit responsible for the beating that Dave took at the hands of Adam, because Adam got to practice against me with the double bus and op Luke list, and Adam took me to town too with it because I was unprepared for those standby castles. I didn't know how to get around it. It was tough. Adam did a great job. So sorry, Dave.
Nice. So, Adam, we did play in a tournament, but I don't think that was your first tournament. I think you're misremembering, because I brought a mall in that my wife painted as a prize, and I had never met you before. Didn't you win that? Or am I
No. I'm pretty sure that was the one that we played.
Oh, that.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah, that was the first tournament that I played in.
Oh, it was the same. You won it. Oh, yes.
It was a raffle, and I got it.
No, okay, then I'm misremembering. So I was half right. So you did win the mall at your first. You did win the mall at your first tournament. Okay.
Yes, yeah, I did.
Okay, so
I did
now I
win
remember
the beautifully painted mini that your wife did. It was awesome.
And it was when Shadow Collected just came out, I believe. So the Shadow Mall was brand new, and she painted that up as a giveaway at the end. And then when you won it, there's like 20-something people there, and it was just a random giveaway. And you won it, and I couldn't have been happier. Oh, there it is. Oh yeah, and it's got the BSE helmet at the base.
Yeah, it's
running
it's
past
awesome.
his dudes. Yeah,
I don't run Shadow Collective, but as you can tell, I've got it right here on my desk.
That's awesome, man. I'm gonna tell my wife that you got it on your desk.
Yeah, please do.
So I was so happy you won that mini. So just for that story, I was so happy you won that mini because we had such a good time. I do want to talk about that game because of all the games I've played, I remember that game as like in the forefront of my mind.
Do you? All right.
Because we had such a good time, we had so much fun. And so just as a quick recap, we both had Vader. And I don't remember your full list, but I had Vader, Kass, Krennic, and I think some Dewbacks maybe. And so I was doing some silly stuff, and I was new waysing Kass, and I just dove your back line. And then with Vader, I was like, okay, I could just run past your Vader, and I felt in my mind, I'm like, that's probably the best way to win. But the more fun way to win is just for Vader to duel Vader for like 3 turns. And that's what we ended up doing. So I went for the fun play, and we just Vader duel Vader for like 3. And this is old rules. 3 or 4 turns. It was like Op Vader versus Op Vader, I think. Just duking it out.
So if you don't mind, I'm sorry if this might take a minute, but I want to put some context onto this because to me, that is also one of the games of Legion that is just emblazoned in my mind. And the reason is in a good way. But I will say that was my first tournament. I was still kind of newer to Legion. Like I said, I got into it as a painting thing during COVID. I had just come off of a game that was probably what I remember as one of my most negative play experiences. And I think I've told him this before, but it was actually with Adam Slaver, who's a member of the Indy Garrison. And before you guys laugh, it was nothing to do with him as an opponent. It was everything to do with me and my issues as a slow player, especially at a first tournament. And everyone that actually knows me and plays me will tell you that I know I'm a slow player. I'm trying to get better. Maybe the reason I went 3-0 at this tournament is because they finally got out chess clocks, and I was like, I really got to focus. Anyway, non sequitur. But that is, for me, the Legion foible that I've struggled to overcome the most, because I fear making that bad decision that I will just be replaying in my head over and over. And so I want to make the best move every time, which isn't always possible. Everybody knows.
Right.
And I had inadvertently, not intentionally, but just sort of, I feel awful about it. I slow played Adam in that round before. He would have won if we'd gone into the next round. He absolutely would have won. He had Maul, Shadow Collective coming up on me and would have buried one of my, VAPs or whatever we were playing. But we ran out of time, and it was entirely on me. And Adam got very upset, and at the time, being my first tournament, and I didn't know etiquette, and I was very new to the scene, I just liked this Star Wars game with little guys, and I didn't understand why he was so mad. Which is on me. It's on me.
Is he going to be upset
him.
that you're telling this story?
No, Adam's chill.
Well, I mean, I will continue to apologize to him for it, as long as he chooses to remember the game, because I remember it and I still feel really bad about it. But it also is an example for me of like, okay, it's a kind of a social contract between players, and you got to learn some of those things too, in addition to the rules, right? Like, there's more. One of the fun things that I've learned about Legion is it's more than just the tactical talk, right? And then, coming off of that, I was feeling awful. I almost just walked out, and I don't know if I would have come back to another Legion tournament. Honestly, I was feeling that bad when I finally kind of clicked as to why he was so upset. And I was like, oh man, this is totally on me. I've just ruined someone's day who at the time, I didn't know Adam. I was like, oh man, maybe if I had known him, I would have, I'd never take it back. I'd do it again. And then I walked into the game with you and ended up having a blast. Like you said, we ended up just kind of, you could have wiped the floor with me. I didn't really know what I was doing. You could have run Vader past and gone for the VAP objective. And
I tried to make it a little more like, I faintly remember, I'm like, if I dive with Vader, the game's over.
Yeah.
But I was like, if I duel, I'm running a risk, but gosh darn it, it's going to be fun to duel. So let's just do it.
And it was in my head the most cinematic duel of any of the films that you've ever seen, right? Like,
I'm sure I was saying some real nerdy shit. Like I was probably
we both were.
Yeah, I was role playing Vader a little bit, I'm sure.
If we had toy lightsabers, we probably would have just started doing that like kids in the backyard. But anyway, and then on top of that, I got to randomly get that raffle win of the beautiful Shadow Collective Maul that your wife had painted. So that to me will stand out as like a kind of a pivotal moment in my little own personal like Legion experience of, well, do I just walk out the door and never play a competitive game again because I'm the problem with the community, and then I get to play you, had a really great time. And also, Adam being a member of the Garrison, later invited me to actually come join, and we get along. We played a lot of games since and had a lot of fun. So sorry, I know that was a long thing, but you just brought that up, and that's a big highlight kind of moment.
That is so amazing. So I knew yesterday when we were chatting, I was like, I'm definitely going to bring up the game we played and where our Vaders dueled because that's fun. Dude, I got to wipe the little tear out of my eye, man.
I know.
That's awesome. No, like seriously, because I was new to Legion at my first tournament. I was new to tabletop games, and I did not know what to expect, and I was nervous about like the vibes and how sweaty everyone was going to be. And I know for me it's difficult because I am a super competitive person and a super competitive player.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I want people to have fun first and foremost. And like, I want to win. I want to win while having fun. Like, right?
Exactly.
And not at the expense of others' enjoyment. And so I also had one negative play experience at my first tournament, and I probably could have handled it better and different. But just like you, like, I was new to it too, so I was feeling some sort of way and probably naive and ignorant and all the things. But the community has just been amazing, and like, that is a perfect story. When you're out there playing and new people are coming in, it's just like being welcoming and making it fun. That was the difference of you staying with Legion. Because I would imagine if I would have been an asshole that day, you might not have came back after like 2 in a row, right?
Yeah.
And so that's an awesome story. Now I feel good. I was nice. I was a nice guy that day.
Good job, Adam. You caught Joe on a good day.
Yeah, you caught me on a good day. No, that's what's so funny. And I know there's at least like 10 people out there that remember playing me. They're like, there's no way they're making up this story. They're trying to change Joe's image.
And he hasn't been the same since. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, no, but that's the great part of like doing this, right? Like, what do you call it? The moonlighting, spotlighting different communities, right? Like you want to do, right?
Yeah, in the moonlight. It's not spotlight. Yeah, moonlight.
In the moonlight.
Yeah, the warm glow.
Get some stories from different players and different moments like that from.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so that's a big memory. What other big memories do you have of Lee? Does anything else stick out?
I mean, I went 3-0 at this one tournament like about a week ago, so like that was kind of cool.
So you said you played Rebels, so you played. I've caught up with you a few times over the tournaments. When I casted the Indie Open, I'd always check in to see how you're doing, and I thought you were just an Empire player, but I think I was just catching you on the Empire days.
I can tell you, Adam's he has a Rebel Soup list that has one of the best win records against me in like ever. It's like Din, Commander Luke,
that's the weird part.
Ahsoka. It's just like, I think of the 3 times we played, he's beat me twice, and I'm just like, what in the world is this?
I think that's just by happenstance of playing things that nobody plays, and I don't know. It just happens to work because you never see those things on the board.
But that's my thing, Adam. That's what I do.
Yeah, but you can do it against more people than I could ever hope to. Like I just happened to find the thing that was a nuisance to you because I kept playing in your basement, and I had it worked one time, and so I kept trying it.
Oh man. Okay. What do you play? Are you going to Adepticon?
No, I wish. I have a different commitment that weekend, unfortunately. I didn't get last year, and I won't make it to this year. One of these times. I'm hoping. Yeah, I'm hoping. Yeah, I had an invite last time, and I couldn't make finances and time work. So
yeah, that's a bummer. Do you have another tournament on the horizon you're going to play in?
We'll see. I want to go down to maybe the Cincinnati guys are having one. Can't remember.
When is that, Adam? Do you remember?
So the Cincinnati Outpost next tournament is on February 22nd. Obviously, Cincinnati, Ohio. And then in Columbus, Ohio, Forward Base Columbus is hosting a tournament on March 22nd. Anybody listening that didn't know that, hopefully now you know. And if you're nearby and you can get out there, do it. Because these guys travel so well and come to all kinds of tournaments. Let's repay that and get out there to theirs. So, okay. Shoot, anything else? Anything else worth talking about? We've already went like 30 minutes past what I thought we would go. So
yeah, like I said, I'm slow. I take lots of time, so that's probably on me.
Okay.
Well, I've got to wrap up here, guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I probably should as well before.
Yep. All right. Yeah, this is a good spot to end. So, Thank you for listening to our first episode of In the Moonlight, Winter Moon podcast with Adam Knauff from the Indy Garrison, who played an awesome double dark list and did really well with it. And Brian, thanks for being here and facilitating the conversation with me. So, yeah.
No problem.
All right. Make sure that you send any questions, any feedback to our Winter Moon mailbag at mail.com, and find us on Substack, wintermoonwargaming.substack.com. And thanks for listening.